Suave.
I've been in my bag for a while, I'm invincible. Story of a young boss, grinding shit get critical. Calling on my bros one time, cause you special. I had some hoop dreams of right rounds for my mentor. Every target that I shoot is on point like a pencil. Different road, changed relationships, I'm so sorry. Came up from the trenches and I made it, I say.
Bet Online is your number one source for all of your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. Bet Online continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting and your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your phone. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and get in on the action. Remember to use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, where the game starts. Alrighty, guys, we are back with another episode of the What's in Your Bag podcast presented by Bet Online. As always, I'm your host, Andrew Robinson, and we are back with the superstar, the famed Alexis Davis. You know, so we haven't seen her face on this podcast in a while. So what's up, Alexis? How have you been lately?
Hey, I'm doing good. Happy to be back.
You know, Alexis has been, you know, as always, she's always on her world tour status. She's currently at NABJ out in Birmingham. So Alexis, you know, what's the vibes like out there right now?
It's pretty cool. I really like, having everybody in one space. We really just establishing those long connections. Yeah, I feel like it's a great experience.
Love it. Now, before we introduce our guest for today, we know we got to knock the business out the way. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, go ahead and stop what you're doing and tap that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up. It goes a long, long way. If you're listening to this on Spotify, go ahead and give us a 5-star rating. Drop a comment and give us some feedback. It goes a long way helping the service get out there. That was my boy Pull Up Tay on the intro. It's going to be him again on the outro. He's one of the hottest up-and-coming artists out of the DMV. So make sure you guys are streaming all of his music, man. It goes a long way. But without further ado, now that we got all the business out of the way, we are pleased to introduce our special guest today. This guest is somebody that we've been trying to get on for a good about 2 months now almost, man. So we're happy to finally get this done. She has a plethora of experiences under her belt. She's doing amazing work. And we are joined by Juju Adams, the social media manager for GQ Sports. So Juju, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, guys. Excited to be here and chop it up with you today.
No doubt. Like I said, this has been something that me and Alexis have, you know, been talking about behind the scenes, trying to get this done. So we're super excited. But you know, how's life, man? I feel like you've been super busy lately, just traveling, summer league and the NBA offseason, the draft. I know you cover it. So, you know, what's life like now? How is everything in the? I guess it's the off season, but I don't know if there's ever really an off season. We're talking about social media.
Yeah. No, never. Well, actually, I've started at GQ. I think it's almost 3 months now. So I'm still in that transition with, you know, following that schedule, having the off season, but now with all these affiliate leagues, all of that going on too, like kind of following that as well. But now doing GQ, I have all these different sports under my plate to keep in just in my radar. And so it almost feels like, but the NBA was always year round. It felt year round. So I'm kind of used to that, never really having a break. Like right now, GQ, one of our biggest focuses is the Women's World Cup going on. So it's been a transition given I'm now paying attention to more worlds. I was doing that naturally because I'm a sports fan and I love watching sports. So now really working and covering and following storylines and of not just basketball, but the rest of the world too. Even though basketball is my number one still, it's okay. But yeah, I've it's been really fun and really exciting and a lot of opportunity when it comes to growth with GQ Sports in particular, given it's the newer part of GQ. I think it was launched maybe 3 years ago. So really being able to figure out the growth strategy behind that and how we see it in the future. So, you know, exciting and big career kind of change that happened more recently for me. So yeah, I've loved it so far though.
I love that. Well, first of all, congrats on the new position. It's only 3 months in, so definitely it's still, you know, congrats are still in order. So congratulations on that as well. What would you say has been the favorite thing you've got a chance to do this summer?
Yeah, well, my favorite thing in general, my favorite time of year is summer in the NBA world. I love, first of all, again, I worked game one of the finals. We went out to Denver for that. So that was kind of the start of the summer for me, getting to go out there and be in the finals atmosphere, especially in Denver. It was crazy loud and it's actually my first finals game I attended because I didn't go to one previously yet at while I was at the NBA. So getting that opportunity to be in the finals atmosphere and um, couldn't believe how loud it was when I got to go. So doing that was kind of like the start, the kickoff of the summer. And then draft is my favorite event of the year. I always say that to everyone because just seeing like these guys' lives change from interviewing them beforehand when they're on the carpet. And last year I was in their hotel rooms as they were getting ready and like talking to them on their suits and was on the bus with them and then seeing how nervous they are, how excited they are, and then all of a sudden they hear their name called and their lives change. Like draft is my favorite for that, just because the emotions, their families, everyone there. So every year I look so like forward to draft, and then summer league kind of tops it off because it's like this event where everything seems very casual and every team's out there. Like it's rare to have an event obviously with NBA where you have all the teams out there, all the teams people out there. Now that I've been in the NBA world for a while, like just knowing people that work for different teams and being able to see them and so it's first fun because of that, and then to support the younger guys and so being able to, I just love the casualness and opportunity that's at Summer League because it's kind of more of a free for all there when it comes to media, less rigid than the real season, obviously with just the guys all being out there. So I loved Summer League was fun. So that was kind of like a great. Again, NBA summer is like probably my favorite. So have to say that that's been what I've been most excited about. And then like we talked about before the call too, like little dabbing into soccer a little bit. So trying to figure out what's our GQ space in the soccer world, especially now with Messi here, is huge. So figuring out just doing more soccer content, seeing it performs, and all of that.
So when you were at the NBA, what was your position on their social team?
Yeah, so I was kind of a hybrid. I was hired to work for the app to kind of launch like the new app. And then I started working with the social team as well, like last or doing just different coverage for them too at draft, at summer league. So I started doing that. And then I actually, while I was at the NBA, I've always been interested in the fashion world and the fashion side of content. So I started. Sorry if people are yelling in the background too, because I'm in New York. Everyone, I'm in New York City, so this is what we're used to all the time. Just gotta say it. But yeah, so I started the fashion content at the NBA, saw it as a place where there was a lot of growth and opportunity when it comes to just tapping into who these guys are off the court. I remember doing interviews at Summer League, and when I got the chance to ask them about fashion, about the tunnel and all that, just seeing their eyes light up, because I felt like how many different times were they asked about, a certain highlight or a certain game and all of that. But then when you finally get to talk to them about something that's a passion and off the court, a way they present themselves and show their personality, I loved that. So I started the fashion strategy at the NBA and was building that there, which was really exciting and awesome and kind of made a lot of sense for me to transition to GQ because I was doing that already at the NBA. As in, I did a closet tour with Kyle Kuzma, and he showed me his pink sweater. If you guys remember that big moment, like kind of doing that, and then I did a different fashion execution with Shay, and so I was doing all this stuff there, and being able to be at GQ now and kind of do it for my full-time job is awesome.
That's so dope. That's so dope. So I know we're talking off air. I feel like we got 3 journalism folks on the pod right now. And I feel like when I was in undergrad, I always knew that like one day I wanted to get into. I was a twin brother as well. Fun fact.
Oh,
We were like, yo, we want to have our own, show on ESPN, like First Take, and I feel like I wanted to pursue journalism since I was in high school. Like I was an opinion editor in my school newspaper as a junior, sports editor my senior year. I majored in journalism, minor in sports studies, and I feel like you always have this vision of art. This is what I want my career to look like, and I want to be in front of the camera and all that kind of stuff. For you, looking at where you are now doing social for GQ, and like you have all these different experiences under your belt from internships and working with the NBA and Fox and ESPN3, like is this how you thought your career would pan out, like doing this for GQ? Like how do you look back at, when you first went to school for broadcast journalism, it was like, all right, I want to be around sports and this is how I want it to look like, versus what you're actually doing now?
Yeah. I would say the biggest thing is, especially I want to say for, for women, like growing up, I never really knew or, saw or heard of any women in sports, like besides, female athletes, like working in sports. And I remember the first woman I saw, and I actually have a specific moment where it happened too. Where I was at a game with my dad and I saw a woman on the field at a UCLA football game. And I remember being like to my dad, like, what is she doing? After she was interviewing them in post game, and him being like, that, that's her job. She's a journalist, like she's a on-air broadcaster, journalist. And I was so shocked at that because I hadn't seen that representation before with females. And then I kind of was like, from there, made it my mission to want to be like that and work in sports for a living. But then one of the biggest things that you realize when you actually start working in the sports world, both just like in college and internships and major and all of that, is that there's so many more opportunities that are not just, broadcast too. Obviously respect to that, but there's so many positions that I didn't even know existed. That, like, I feel like so much now my interests and what I thought I was going to be doing has evolved per se, because now with social, I was actually telling the story yesterday. When I think before social media, you kind of had a more specific path, if you wanted to do journalism, especially on air, where you either maybe were a beat reporter for a team, or you started off, worked in a small market and kind of worked your way up. Now with social, I'm getting a lot of opportunity that I feel like people that work in broadcast, it's taken them maybe a little bit longer because social kind of has expedited it, given the access and all of that. Like, I've interviewed LeBron James, and I would imagine that I would have done that until maybe like goal setting wise, like 10 years from now. But because I have a phone and get the access with my phone, that I didn't think I would be able to be in 5 years ago, and especially with how much social has advanced and been important, and how much these teams have grown. So like it's really crazy because I'll be with my phone next to a big ESPN camera, like doing something similar, but like they get like maybe their 10-minute interview with, a guy, and then I get my 2 minutes. But we're still interviewing the same person, which is just like mind blowing. So social is really just, there's so much opportunity there, when it comes to access and growth, and how much it's all ever changing, and the platforms and all of that. But it's so huge, and it wasn't something I ever really knew that I was going to work as my full job. And now that I am, it's wild. So I didn't really see that happening, and it's, I'm just welcome to all the surprises that happen when you come working in social, and I'm embrace it. It's fun.
So how would you say I know you were saying that you've always kind of been at that intersection of NBA and fashion and things like that, but when you decided to go from NBA to GQ Sports, how did you kind of make that decision? Because I know a lot of times, like, the newness can be kind of scary, even though the new job might align with everything. But if you've been accustomed to working at said job for so long, how did you decide, like, okay, I'm going to make this next step and I'm going to move over here, and to also the challenges that come with being in a managerial position too? Like, how did you kind of decide to make that next transition?
Yeah, I mean, I like change. I wouldn't say I feel like in my life I've always tried to embrace change. One of the biggest things was like I from Los Angeles, Southern California area, and went to USC and was kind of looking for, especially in my 20s, to like really find a big moment of change. And I love challenges. And I think I moving to New York was really big for me because then I, was from LA, very comfortable, all my friends, my family, all there, all of that. But moving to New York really tested me. And so I kind of realized in those moments too that like I really like that. And I really like a change and I like challenge and something that could push me forward. And I felt that I was just excited for an opportunity, especially at GQ, to really grow something. So, because at the NBA is so established, and like I said, I think I want that my manager, he kind of helped start GQ Sports, and I'm pretty sure it was 3 years ago, I want to say. And so I liked that there's basically every day I have a lot of freedom to come up with the just ways that we want to keep growing GQ Sports and how there is that need to grow. The NBA obviously doesn't need to grow anymore necessarily. Like if they obviously they would still want that, but like their platforms don't need to. But GQ Sports like is very new still, and we're still trying to find our footing in the sports world. And having the GQ name attached to it is obviously so super helpful. But like there's still so much more that we want to grow when it comes to even following and engagement and all of that. And so be up for that challenge. Like I said, since I like that, is really exciting and fun. And sometimes there's wins, and then sometimes you'll post something that you think would do awesome and it sucks or doesn't perform very well. And that is something that I didn't experience as much because at the NBA, for example, like again, you have less performance, more performance, but like everything was doing well, because once you have like 60 million followers or 70 million now, I forget how much they have, but everything's going to do somewhat well at some point, you know what I mean? So that's kind of fun to really be in this small team, really just working hard to grow.
That's amazing. That's amazing to be able to have like, your footprints on something that's, growing and on the up and up. That's going to be great, when you look back on it a couple of years from now and see where you were able to take it, in such a short amount of time. I wanted to ask you something that you said on a previous podcast I was listening to, What Fulfills You. I'll go ahead and give them a shout out as well, because that was a great episode. You mentioned that, obviously being a woman in sports and coming up in this industry, how oftentimes you get a bunch of kind of like, backhanded compliments, or people will make comments to those stuff and kind of question your sports knowledge. And I love the story that you told about, I think you said you might have been at like some type of camp or event or something like that. That guy, oh, well, what are you here for? And then you called him out in front of the whole group. I just want to ask you, like, having those type of experiences, did that ever discourage you from kind of continuing to pursue this industry? Like, and what were you telling yourself in those moments when, you might have those people who doubted, if you belonged in this space, things of that sort?
Now I'm at a point where I don't feel like, or I try not to prove anything to everyone and just let my work show for itself. Like, I don't think anymore that do I have to get into one of the classics things is like when you ran into a man at a bar or something, or like a guy at a bar and you tell him you work in sports. Oh, wow. So tell me about, you start quizzing you and you're like, I don't want to do this. Like, what do I owe? I go look at my work that I've done. You know what I mean? So like, it's just funny because I think that will always exist. But I wouldn't say it's a discouragement. I just think now more than anything, it's almost laughable. But there are moments where it gets uncomfortable at times when, and it happens all the time. Like even at Summer League, I was in a situation where I was talking to this guy, and he about my background in fashion. And he's like, you don't know who that is. Like when I was bringing up a recruit, kind of it felt weird in my stomach, but I'm kind of just like let it roll off. You know what I mean? Like I'm just these type of things you just gotta like let roll off because ultimately they don't know you, and if you want to really know if I know my stuff, like I just let that shine through my work, and becoming extra prepared, coming to a situation and doing my best and showing that. And I know that believing in myself is most important. I also think it's funny working from the NBA, from GQ, is GQ coming to this environment again. It's they're not a sports company. I was at a sports company, so now I'm like, me and my manager are two people that are like the sports people. And so I came from a company where I was in a sports company, but I was also the fashion girl. So like people would come to me about the fashion content and like asking me about the shows and asking me about, you know, what players are going to which shows during fashion week, which ones should we pay attention to, all of that. Now at GQ, it's like I have to, people are coming to me about all the sports questions. And so it's funny now being the sports girl at a more fashion magazine. But it also too is empowering because it's like, they know that I was hired for this and they know that I know my stuff. They know that my background, they know I come from the NBA. So a lot of people like they ask me these questions in confidence, being like, I don't know anything about sports, Julia. Please tell me like who are the stand-up players right now in the Women's World Cup and who should I be paying attention to? And like, should I write something on from a GQ perspective? So like be sure of yourself and I just feel like I try and do that all the time when it comes to any situation I'm uncomfortable with, just being confident in myself and my ability.
So with, social, it's like 24 hours. Yeah, they say, only work your 8 hours, try to unplug, things like that. So how do you kind of stay on top of things, stay on top of what's going on, so you can always have these different ideas, but then also take a second to unplug? Like, how does that balancing act go for you?
Yeah, I would probably say that's like the biggest thing I need to work on. Obviously, I'm not going to pretend that I'm great at it. It's 24/7. Like again, not 24/7, that's dramatic, but it's all the time. It's weekends, it's nights, it's always. So I'm always on, which doesn't sound glamorous and it's not, but at the same time, I have to be able to I want to be better at setting boundaries because there's that risk of burnout. And I know too that what's something I'm trying to get really better at is scheduling and like scheduling content out and making a day for me so that I schedule stuff out for the weekends that I don't have to worry about as much. I'm just thinking of last week, for example, there was Devin Booker posted the photo of him and Michael Jordan. And I remember that would have been like kind of a cool repost for GQ. But I was on, I went on to the Jersey with some friends. And so I was trying to unplug a little bit more. And so I missed that moment and being like okay with that. And that's why I'm grateful to like have Peter, who's my manager and also helps me with the social stuff.
All right, cool. I wanted to ask you, one thing you also said, is that, in this field, women have to do, a lot more work, than men. Like, and I wanted to ask you about that because I feel like people always say, as a woman, you have to work twice as hard or be twice as good and stuff. But I feel like also, from my perspective at least, when you look at the field of sports journalism, currently, right, there's so many like former players who are on TV or, who get these kind of positions. And sometimes it can be difficult to kind of assimilate into this industry if you haven't played a sport or if you're not like an ex-pro athlete or that kind of stuff. So I kind of want to talk to you about that and like, what advice would you give to somebody else who's trying to, navigate this industry who number one, might be a woman and might not understand that, hey, like, you might be great at your job, you might be, the best in your class, but you're gonna have to work, X amount of times harder, or you might have to take this different path because, you might not have played a sport or been a pro athlete. Like, what do you have to think? What do you have to say about that ideology?
Yeah. So quick tangent, but one of my favorite things I did at the NBA that like was still probably one of the most my favorite parts of my career so far is that I started a women's series where I interviewed women just around the league to shed light to all the different incredible women stories. But having that awareness, but also not letting it discourage you is so important. I've played basketball, but only to like seventh, eighth grade. So there's a lot, but I am not afraid to ask questions and always look to be learning, especially when it comes to a lot of the rules side of knowing like players and stats and all of that. And so I think just being honest with yourself and like that I know so much about the game and there's always room to be learning and growing, not being afraid to ask those questions and know that if you're interviewing or if you're on a big former player or whatever, that they could provide some analysis and insight that maybe you don't have, but also it's being able to ask them questions and get some of their insight as well too. It only makes you stronger and sharper as a person. So I think just approaching it is that we're always learning. Again, like I study really hard. I know my stuff, but also too being honest in the sense where, given I haven't played on that level, that there's some things that I don't know, and wanting to be prepared and ask those questions and know that versus acting like I know everything, is important in my opinion.
But kind of like a two-part question for you. When you're, let's say, when you went to Denver, how did you kind of, okay, so, they let you know, hey, we're gonna send you to Denver, cover social, etc. So what was like your game plan as far as like, did you kind of create almost like a shot sheet in your head of like, okay, I know I want to get this, I want to get this, and how much of this stuff was pre-planned versus, stuff is just on the spot, something cool you might see once you get to the arena?
Yeah, I mean, I want to say, and Peter and I joke about this a lot, that we could plan everything, and then the thing that performs the best is that one thing that we just saw randomly. And actually, I'll give an example. At draft, we had a whole plan. We did all this red carpet interviews where we did like, have them react to draft outfits from 10 years ago, from LeBron's class, and having them, break down their outfit and all of this stuff. And all of those video edits were amazing. Then we decided to film the first 3 picks and them getting picked, and had a whole shot sheet of just storylines and everything that we wanted to capture, important questions. And then the video that went viral was I was randomly standing down at the floor before draft, and Wemby came out, and some of the fans were calling to him, and some guy gave him his cell phone, and then he took a photo and then just tossed the phone, like went like this and tossed it up and like kind of hit the guy, like not intentionally, but it was just kind of like this little this random movement that he did. And it was, he seemed really confident, but also too, a lot of the comments were like, oh wow, look at that accuracy, like look at, playing on him. So it got like a bunch of views, and that was so random. I just had my phone out and I saw him interacting with fans, and I was like, I'm gonna get this moment. And that was our best performing clip. It's still pinned on our TikTok in case anyone wants to see it on GQ Sports. But it was, again, that moment was the best performing of draft. And I'm like, we planned all this stuff. But the same thing happened for the finals. So we went into the finals, at GQ in particular, we like finding these unique, weirder storylines that we could capture. Quirky, not weirder, but just to be a little bit different. Because at the NBA, one of the things I was always get is like warm-up reels, especially before a game, like Jimmy Butler warming up, the Joker warming up. But one of the things that I really wanted to capture was like the Joker tying his wedding ring to his sneakers and showing, that ring on his sneakers. And so that was like a storyline we wrote out in advance, was like, make sure to capture the ring, like zoom in and see it, because it was kind of being talked about before. Another one was like Tyler Hero possibly coming back during the finals and that. And so trying to film him and do something like, is Tyler coming back tonight? Things like that. So identifying these stories. But then another, like there's something that you can't plan for. Like I didn't realize how crazy the atmosphere was going to be in Denver. And we filmed just a sound of the crowd noise and like just a pan of the crowd and put that on TikTok. And that's something that, like, again, you couldn't plan for. I didn't realize how loud it was going to be there. And that was like one of the most awesome parts of being at the game. And so like finding those, it's just all balance. It's a balance of having those, coming to everything with ideas and plans, especially of interview time, with the guys directly, coming with those plans, but then too, just kind of keeping your phone out and being like aware of what's going on. A lot of that comes with like time and practice too, like just being kind of aware and conscious of like what the guys are doing and trying to find those unique moments. It just kind of comes with practice sometimes, but it's all about that balance, I would say, in a long answer for that question.
Oh, no worries. So when you GQ has a lot of other entities other than just social, they have the YouTube channel and all these different things. So how would you say you kind of communicate with the other entities? Like for let's say you have the YouTube page has a new episode of 10 Essential Things. So how does your social team interact with the team that produces that to make sure that you are capturing things for social that you can promote the episode, things like that? Like how does that communication work?
Yeah, so it's constant communication. I work really regularly with our video team and our web team because a lot of what we're doing is, given we're also a magazine, is like making sure that we amplify and clicks and support clicks to our content on the web. So I try and, there's native posts, stuff like that, but then, we'll post something that is a photo with basically kind of a caption that says like hit the link in bio to read more, and that's like looking to drive those clicks. So that's like something we're also looking to do. But then with the video team for 10 essentials, one of my main things that I do is when they show me a preview for a 10 essentials, kind of going in and cutting out the social clips for it and those time codes and looking at what do I think would perform best for TikTok, what would perform best for our Instagram, what would perform best for Twitter, and identifying those clips and communicating that back with our video team, and then they send me the social cuts. So a lot of that is like they have a whole schedule of people that are coming in to film one of those videos, whether it's 10 essentials, my first million, all of that, and I get to kind of watch those over early, which is cool, and determine what would perform best on the social platforms, and drive that all drives back to the website to see the full thing, see on YouTube. So that's honestly a fun part. Sometimes too, if whoever's coming in has a little bit more time, given they film a lot of those videos in our New York office where I work, like if we sometimes could get a social ask for them too, we will, like even a takeover, or like even a little TikTok idea. So we are all kind of working hand in hand all the time. So my main involvement there is either communicating the social cuts that we get extra time in between or after their shoot to do something social with the guys that or girls, I don't know why I keep saying guys, help, to come in, that I'll make sure to plan that out too. So it is fun, and it's yeah, I definitely, one of the things I want to do soon though is be on set for one of the videos, because I haven't been on set fully for one yet. And again, they film them like the floor right below me. So I wanted, that's one of my goals in the next, is to really see like a full 10 essential shot from beginning to end.
That's,
So with living, oh, sorry, did you?
well, I said that's fire.
When you are in New York, what has been some challenges as far as living in New York? I know you're saying you're originally in LA, now you're in New York, just, the fast pacedness of it. LA is pretty expensive too, but New York is expensive as well. So just trying to navigate that as like a young person, financially, mentally, like all of that. How has that gone for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Like I feel like, again, I there's a lot of times in New York where I know people say this, that it's the busiest city, but also too sometimes it could feel like the loneliness, which is so funny. You like, there's this part of New York that really brings out you doing a lot of things alone a lot of the time, which has been like a great thing for me, I think, in general, when it comes to growth and all of that. But I mean, financially, it's hard. Like I feel like, being transparent, the past 2 years of living here, that I don't really have like a living space. Like it's kind of like because I'm traveling a lot, and I just kind of, I have a bed in my room, and I just basically put my, I have my stuff, I go sleep here, but I'm out all the time, which is kind of like a blessing. And also too, like I would love at some point to like have a place that feels more like I'm living, which is why I want to move to Brooklyn at some point, because then you kind of get more bang for your buck, and also too, it's you more of a space to create your own. But I feel like I've lived in kind of more of a nomadic lifestyle these past 2 years, because I live in, yeah, like I have moved twice already, and again, I'm not going to say that it's easy. It's definitely hard at times, but I also feel like it's one of the most fun and rewarding parts of being in New York, is like to really figure out how to, like, or just be okay with that, and be okay with like kind of feeling nomadic at times, especially in this job too, because I'm traveling a lot, and I feel like a lot of my time is spent out and about and not in my apartment too. So like that's another layer of all of it too that helps me feel like more nomadic per se, which I joke about. And there's at some point I know I'm going to want to, again, like I said, live somewhere where I'm going to be able to have it feel more like a place and more like home, but like having a room that just has, a bed, and that's all I need for right now. It's just kind of the part of New York that you accept and you get used to, because things are really freaking expensive here. And but yeah, so I had to come to terms with that, because in LA, like it's cheaper to in different parts of LA to just to live. And New York, it's part of the experience of being here is to kind of really like accept that you're not going to have a lot of space, and how does that work, and how do you figure out how to, I have all the tips and tricks when it comes to fitting stuff in a closet, or like putting stuff under my bed, or investing in that stuff, because yeah, but it's again, it's a challenge, and it's fun and exciting to be able to like kind of embrace that too.
That's awesome. That's awesome. One of my favorite things that you said on the What Fills You podcast, it was a gem, and I definitely want to ask you about it, because you said, and I quote, relationships are everything in this industry. I've never applied for an opportunity online and gotten it. And I was like, wow, like it's crazy to think about all the opportunities that you've had. This was in 2021, granted. So first of all, I wanted to ask you, is that still true here in 2023? And then secondly, like, can you just kind of expound upon just the power of relationships, and how at the end of the day, you've been able to kind of move up in this industry and have such awesome roles, like you have now, just strictly off of, connections.
Yeah, no, it's still true. My GQ job was also a relationship that I fostered during the time I actually asked Peter, who's now my manager, to go get coffee, because I was doing the fashion show at the NBA, and I was like, I'm curious about hearing about it. I used to read my dad's GQ's magazines, and it was always somewhere where I thought would be amazing to work, wanting to hear more about his experience. And in our coffee, he was like, he was like, yeah, we're hiring a position right now. And the timing ended up being really great, and working out like that. But I think too, it's a relationship business, even when it comes to interviewing the guys and them knowing your face. And also at the same time though, like just for opportunities, keeping like, because sports is so competitive, and there's so many people that are applying the jobs, and I use Instagram as a huge tool for me, because I just like kind of anyone that's I follow everyone that works within the space, and I'm always interested in meeting new people, and connecting with them. And I just have realized in that like developing and fostering these relationships, and not just like a easy way, but like actually I'm interested in people. And I obviously get to, like, I think all of us three here are all interested in people, and that's like such a strength in general, because just when you are reaching out and having these conversations and meeting people, they might have an opportunity open up. But like if I'm at GQ and have an opportunity open up, and I think of, oh, I had that really great conversation with a girl, and let me think, like, let me reach out and see what she's doing. And I just feel like that's a lot of how things happen in sports now, given it's a competitive space, that you just need to, that your resume alone sometimes won't do it all. So sometimes too, when I talk to a lot of people about advice, is that LinkedIn, obviously a huge tool when it comes to networking. And I always say that when you apply to a job, like at the NBA, for example, look at your network, look at even people, not even if you don't know anyone, like look on LinkedIn and see maybe if you could find anyone that works there and send them a message. I have a good friend that works at the NBA now that said he just saw, he applied for a job at the NBA, and he saw a woman post something about a role. He was just doing some searching, and he just messaged her. And it's like, there's so much power in that. And you would think maybe that's not, you kind of hear that and you're like, there's no way he got a job doing that. But there's so many people I know that did that, because just your resume cold alone, I think, unfortunately too, also isn't enough anymore. Like you kind of need to figure out ways to meet people, either if that's through an Instagram DM or a LinkedIn message, all of that, to really stand out, because unfortunately these jobs are really competitive, because everyone wants to work for the NBA, or everyone wants to work for the NFL. So it's like all about finding those relationships and making them work. And so it's crazy. It's a crazy part, because I grew up with just knowing people that work in different industries, even having friends that are now doing finance, or now doing like law. Like their worlds work so differently when it comes to that stuff. Like there's hiring season, it's just so different. And then looking for a job in sports, you don't have a specific hiring season. It's all just kind of random opportunities come up all the time, and sometimes I just feel like the opportunities don't come up either. There's sometimes dry periods, and so it's just like relationships are everything when it comes to really finding those opportunities and standing out.
Yeah, no, for sure. So you kind of touched on the opportunity here with GQ over coffee. Was there another example, or maybe like your favorite story where it's like, man, like that you can recall, like, I know that this opportunity came about because of this relationship? Is there one that maybe you're most proud of, or maybe one that, dang, if it wasn't for this opportunity, I don't know if I'll be here today, type of thing? Like, or what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of one of those kind of situations that really paid off, just having a connection or knowing somebody in a certain situation?
Yeah. Again, I want to, even when it comes to being at GQ now, like, quick sec, just a lot of it is relationships too, and my personal relationships when it comes to like content, and the relationships I've developed to even players, or just people that work for players, everything like that, to really help things come to life. Like one things I'm really proud of more recently is for Fashion Week. I developed a relationship. I have a good friend, Vic, and she does a lot of like styling and for some of the guys. And so she's been great, amazing relationship for me, because she's also connected me to some of the players, and just kind of a relationship, because they're looking to do more fashion content and I'm looking to have them on our platform. So Fashion Week, I worked with like Miles Turner. We did something with him. We did something with Josh Christopher. We did something with Kat. We did a lot of guys that just to do like takeovers, show them at a fashion show. And a lot of those were through relationships. So it's cool how it's not only for job opportunities, but it also for even content opportunities. Because when they know you and they know your face and they know what you're associated with, and eventually when you're around a lot, like they start knowing that you're someone that they could trust, or someone that they like your work and all of that. And so that only builds for better content, you know what I mean? And so that's been an important part. The other thing I'll say too, when it comes to a job was, so I graduated during COVID with my master's. And I remember it was at a time where I felt just like very, like everything was on a hiring freeze. And I felt very, like I have no idea when I'm going to get a job, and I have no idea when sports is going to start hiring people. So I started working at a restaurant and freelancing for a little bit. And during that time, I made it my mission to like call or LinkedIn message someone like every week and make a whole list of contacts. And so I did that for a long time, not a lot, for a few months, well, especially during COVID. I want to say I started doing that in like August, and I got my job at the NBA around February. So I did that for a while, and eventually at some point I ended up having a conversation with a girl who's one of my super good friends now, who told me about a position that was being hired at the NBA. And I just had a cold conversation with her, and she's like, you should apply for this, whatever. And she helped me get my job at the NBA eventually. And just, I'm proud of myself for in that time not giving up, especially when things felt very stagnant and slow. And I felt like, am I ever gonna, obviously I'm grateful to have a job and work at a restaurant, but like, am I ever gonna have that breakthrough in sports? And being really scared in that time too about like if I was gonna feel or follow or realize my dreams at all of working in sports. But just staying really consistent with controlling what I can control, and working on those relationships during that time ended up like helping me so much with landing my first job. And your first job's always the hardest to get. So once you're in that world, once I was in the NBA world, I was able to make even more relationships. So yeah, I'm proud of myself there for like keeping, persistent and not giving up in a time where and a lot of people felt like this during that time, but not giving up in that time too.
I know you talked about, capturing other people's fashion and collabs and kind of giving them a platform to talk about their fashion. How would you kind of describe your style? Like, what do you like? In New York, you experience, well, versus Phoenix, it's just summer, it's just hot, hot, hot. What is the weather? It's hot. Like, there's nothing, there's no coats, there's no layering. It's how can I feel the coolest throughout the day? So, like, in New York, you experience all four seasons. It might not be to, a max capacity, but you experience all four seasons. So how would you say you kind of go about dressing yourself, spring, summer, winter, etc.?
Yeah, well, one of the coolest things that I've learned about being a New Yorker is that I feel like New Yorkers are so fashionable because first of all, people just try everything. Like, there isn't some sort of, doesn't feel like a dress code when it comes to when you see people walking around New York. I see people in everything that you could possibly imagine. From like, I'm like, where did you get this? And living in New York, especially in the winter, and I actually feel like I heard Shay say something similar like this on an interview too, is that winter time is like really when you get to test your style, because in summer, like, it's harder to experiment, but like in the layering and like winter, I feel like is where you actually get to try more things and get to kind of figure out more your fashion. And I felt like that pretty strongly when I moved to New York, was learning how to with layers and accessories and hats, like really find what my fashion was there. I would like to say in general though, I'm someone who's like and I feel like men in men's fashion too, this is strong too, where I like having kind of a uniform. And I know I got this from my dad, which is why I said I know this is big in men's fashion. Was that I just feel like having something that that you feel confident in, you feel good in, and you could wear every day is something that, and alternate between those pieces, like those basics, is something I really like. Like, I'm a big, denim jeans. I like wearing some sort of more basic shirt or tank top or something like that. And then I like get a little bit more funky with my shoes. My shoes are always my staple piece. Like, I love sneakers, so I'll always get a little bit more fun with my shoes. But when it comes to like daytime, I always usually am wearing something like that, like a pair of jeans, blue jeans, and yeah, and then I like getting fun with my glasses and my shoes, I would say. When it comes to office, I'm a big loafer wearer because that is like, I love styling loafers, and but in the summer mixing more dresses in there, but I'm a big just like trouser, and I like wearing button downs and wearing yeah, like just some sort of basic top on top too. So I just feel like more than anything, confidence is most important when it comes to fashion, and having that uniform kind of helps you with that confidence part because you just know that you feel comfortable in it. So I try and always, stick to that, but I like to experiment too. But sneakers is where I do that the most, I would say.
Love it, love it. So speaking of your fashion, I wanted to ask you because you've been kind of pretty vocal about how, like, growing up you were always like a tomboy and you were into sports and you didn't really value like dressing up and things like that. So I wonder how has that changed as you've gotten older? How has that developed? And then also now working for a publication like GQ, right? It's literally a fashion magazine. Everybody's dolled up and dressed to the T, right? So how has that kind of been a give and take between, maybe your younger self when you were like, yo, I could never even imagine, wearing anything like this or working in this space? How you kind of been able to balance those two things with your personality and then working in this space now?
Yeah, well, I always say that when it comes to like my interest and passion, that sports was always first, fashion came later, especially given that I would wear jerseys. Like, I have so many photos of me in just Kobe and Shaq jerseys, and I would wear them to like everything, like from birthday things to like just school. And so I would say that I didn't even have or didn't really know my fashion for a while, or my interest in fashion for a while. Especially, I want to say that I was influenced from my dad through that, too, with his interest and love for GQ, but also to like his own fashion, really inspired me. But it was always sports first. But then I would say especially like in my teens, more to my 20s is when I really got into fashion and figuring out how I wanted to express myself through my clothes and what that meant. And it's obviously been it's a lot of figuring yourself out along the way. There's times where I wore more, like I said, more like took more risks and did more stuff. And then now I like the whole uniform type vibe. So that like took a while to figure out now that I'm like 26, but I was really nerve wracking. I want to say on my first day at GQ, because I knew that everyone was going to be really dressed. And I knew that I was, again, like I said, the fashion girl at the NBA, but now becoming the sports girl at a fashion company was like, okay, what does that mean? And am I going to be dressed well enough? Like, what are these women going to wear? Also, too, we're Condé Nast, so I'm right next to Vogue. So, like, that's so scary, and that was scary in itself too, thinking about that. So I felt pressure in the beginning. I was like, I know people are going to look good, but like I said, it's all about confidence. It's all about wearing things that you feel confident in, and that is what presents itself more than anything else. So I in the workspace, I'm all about being appropriate and dressing that way, but I also to try and make it myself. I still wear sneakers in the office. I don't see as many sneakers as I saw at the NBA. Obviously, there's more heels and more like loafers, a little bit more like that. But I still wear my sneakers because that's just being true to myself, and that's what I'm confident in. And I think that's everything in fashion. You know what I mean? Like if you being confident in it and showing your personality, and that's part of my personality is my interest in sneakers. So like, that's how I've embraced it, I guess. But I would say the first week I was definitely nervous that I was like, okay, I feel like I really have to dress, so it was a transition at first and a little bit intimidating, but this GQ is casual in general, and it's men's fashion, so it's not as the women's fashion world, I gotta say, is a little scary to me. Respect to them, but that it was definitely a little bit of a learning curve. It felt like for a second, though, or just a little scary.
So to be clear, like when you go into the office, are you putting on a fit? Like, are you conscious of what you're throwing on? You feel me? Because you mentioned like, you're still wearing the sneakers sometimes, but then again, all right, you're next to Vogue, so you do have the press. Like, what's the vibes as far as putting together an outfit for work? Like, cause I feel like you can't just. I don't know. Actually, I'm not assuming you can't. I feel like you can't just roll in there in sweats, but at the same time,
Oh yeah, no, but
like,
I mean, I always like to put it on. Like I've never, I'm yeah, I always like to dress. Like even when I was at the NBA, I would always like to dress up and look good for work. Again, I liked, but more street style, and I would say still more street style now in the way that I dress. Like that's a lot of my big influence is just seeing what people are wearing around New York too, and also the thrift shopping around here. Like, I love that. But I definitely am conscious of what I'm putting on every day. Like I don't roll out of bed and like, okay, it's going to be this. I try and think about all the details. But when it comes to I just thought when I first started, I was like, am I allowed? Because I'm not a heel girl. Like I'm not a heel girl. And so I was a little nervous about that. But then GQ like seeing, I just knew that that's okay. I don't know if the women at Vogue wear sneakers when I don't really, I as much, but that's okay. That's them. And there's not any judgment that exists with me wearing sneakers too. But so I definitely dress up, though, to answer your question there. I would say dressing up doesn't mean necessarily like dressing up, like I'm wearing a dress or I'm fancy. Like I just like picking out a good outfit and looking good and yeah.
So just to clarify, you mentioned Vogue. So is there an office near yours, or like is it the same? Like what's where?
Yeah, so no, you're good, you're good. So it's all under Condé Nast. So Condé Nast is the head company that owns GQ, Vogue, Architectural Digest, Glamour. There's more that I'm blanking on. And so basically on my floor, there's like a section where each magazine has like their people. So like GQ's right here, and then we're next to Glamour, and then around the corner is, I want to say, Architectural Digest, Teen Vogue, And then around the corner, even before that, like Vogue is across the way. So like we're all on the same floor in the World Trade Center. And so it's funny because you get all these magazines, I feel like also to have their own personality. And so it's like you see a lot of different types of people. Like GQ's, there's a lot of men, obviously. And yeah, and I mean they do have a good amount of women as well too, which has also been great. But it's just funny to see the different dynamics of like every magazine and office because everyone's different, you know?
That's dope. That's dope. So, all right, you've done a bunch of cool stuff, over the course of your career, from obviously, like you said, just recently, the Manchester United piece you did and the NBA draft and summer league, right? So give us like I guess a day in the life, or if they say, Juju, you're gonna go here, right? Like, what is some of your tasks? What does a typical day look like? Working for GQ, and like, what does that look like for you when you go on these trips and on these roads on the road?
Yeah, so again, like I said, because it's a lot of it is kind of up to me with I have a lot of freedom with figuring out. So summer league in particular was kind of all on my own merit with coming up with what I wanted to do. So I organized a lot of things around it. I knew that day one I wanted to go to obviously Wemby's debut, Scoot's debut, make sure I was there for those big moments, make sure to capture any celebrities, any athletes courtside. That was kind of my plan for day one. But then I was like, I'm going to set up some opportunities just of things that I think would be cool. One of the things they worked really closely with, I worked with this group, Showroom LA, and they had a bunch of the players go shopping at their big setup. They had a lot of cool designers and brands, and so the players would kind of hop in there and buy outfits and buy clothes throughout summer league. So I spent a lot of time in there, and that was just something I organized through like on more on my own merit. And then so again, some of it is me, but then too, I have again a lot of relationships at the NBA from working there. So their PR people sent me an invite for like a Dreamville event that I covered because it was showcasing a lot of the players. A lot of players clothing lines. So like I went to that and did a whole takeover and covered that. So that was a little bit more organized. And there's also things that aren't organized and just kind of like, I'm just going to try this out and test this out and then see how it works. So I would say that no day is similar when it comes to like when I'm not covering an event. Like today, it's a lot of, posting on social, thinking either if we have videos coming from our video team, articles that I know we want to promote, but also to like just stuff that's newsy that we want to circulate. Like we're going to put out a women's World Cup video, 10 Essentials video that we're recirculating because of their games coming up, our game coming up. So that's a lot of like what I'm doing on a daily basis is just figuring out publishing plans and figuring out, what we think would perform and whatnot. But when it comes to covering an event, yeah, it's a lot of preparation, a lot of, reading up ahead of time, knowing my stuff, and then coming to the event, filming, and then working really fast to edit, get things posted on all the different platforms, working with Peter to do that too. And then, like at draft, it's you see these interviews, but then also like that we're doing, and a lot of them we have to turn out pretty quickly because we want to get them up right away as everyone else is. So we're sitting and editing and doing that right after doing them. So it's you have to work kind of fast pace, but it's again you can't really sit and enjoy, okay, wow, I just interviewed Wemby, no, I need to get this out right away and whatever. So it's a lot of fast time. The one story I always like to tell though is when I was at Lakers Media Day, the one time I've let myself really just sit and like be appreciative was when I was with LeBron, just given how incredible of an athlete and he is, and historic for the NBA in general. I was like, I'm gonna give myself 15 seconds just to like sit here and appreciate him, because in social you're always working, and like just to appreciate him and like his greatness and like how incredible athlete he is. So it's hard to do that sometimes in social, kind of like we were saying, and I'm sure too, but I really, yeah, it's a lot of go I would say, and on a day-to-day basis. But also too, when you have the time to like sit and think like that was pretty cool, do that too.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you, especially with like doing WNBA. A
Yeah.
lot of times, since this is like my first year working in WNBA, a lot of times when we have these home games, this is my first time seeing majority of like my favorite players in person. Like usually just watch them on TV. So especially being like sit so for me, we sit at the scores table, like the
Okay.
internal social media. So like seeing them, so it's kind of like you're seeing them for the first time, seeing their game, their warm up routines and stuff like that. But then you're like, oh no, like I'm working, like I'm still working. I still got to push out this content. But then you still want to look to see like what they're doing. And then I know for me, since I'm just like an overall fan of the league, and like my attention of course has to be to the Mercury, but like if I have a favorite player that's on the other team, trying not to get too involved with what they're doing, with knowing that I still have to cover our team. So just kind of like balancing that and still being able to say like I'm appreciative to be here. A couple of years ago never thought I would be working here, so just kind of
Yeah.
taking a second to really realize like hey, like I'm sitting at a scores table at 40 WNBA games this year. Like it's okay to, be happy and, be that you're there. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're a fangirl. It just means that you're happy and, you actually enjoy your job versus like I'm sure the people that you were mentioning earlier, like your friends that work in finance and stuff like that, yeah, I'm sure they're getting paid more than you and I. But it's like, do they wake up and they're excited for what they're gonna post? Are they
Totally.
excited? Are they excited for what they're gonna meet? They're gonna wear a suit today. I get to wear my leather combo and my sneakers, and it's like
And your
everything that
Rick
goes along. Like
Owens,
yes,
and your Rick Owens. Don't forget the Rick.
Oh wow, not the
oh
Rick
my
Owens.
they will never let that go. I mentioned wearing Rick Owens to this party one time, and they will not let it go.
I hope
But
you wear it to I hope you wear it to you gotta wear it. You'll get comments. Are you kidding? If you wear it to a Mercury game, that would be so awesome.
Texas is
I
may
just
as well
I
be
don't know.
sponsored
It's
by
just
Rick Owens.
fun.
She may as well be sponsored by Rick Owens. Let me stop. Don't let her get back on her spiel. My bad. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I was finishing, but basically, I'm just saying, like, I totally understand, like, and I'm happy that you gave yourself those seconds. The Lakers is just a legendary
Yeah.
organization within itself. So just the fact that you were able to, give yourself that time in that moment, I think is really necessary.
Yeah. No, back at UT, I mean Mercury, with the players you're around too, like Diana PG, like yeah. Same. It's hard sometimes when you're in social because you're working, 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 and you're like focused on I need to get this out right now. I need to do this, and you need to. It's easy to get caught up in that and worry about the outputs and worry about, but really taking that time to be grateful and appreciate like what you're doing, I think is so important. And I need to sometimes do better at in general. But it's definitely important to anyone that works in social, I would say, because it is really freaking cool at the end of the day because we're working in sports.
So I gotta ask because since you brought up LeBron is my favorite player of all time. So I have to ask you just about what that interview was like, man. Just can you talk about just what that moment was like? What was it like interviewing him? Is he, personable? Like, how do you roll up to Bron and be like, hey, like, can I ask you a couple questions? So how does that work? And then can you just talk about that whole experience? Just getting a chance to interview him.
Yeah, so it was actually basically it was for Lakers Media Day. I got to capture a lot of content of him just at the photo station, filming him there. And then there was a back room for interviews that the NBA was doing. And so I got to ask him a few questions within that room just about, his it was about the milestone and about just some of the social questions we had planned out that I'm already blanking on. But all I remember is my biggest takeaways from that were again, there's people that are just so big and like so great like that. Like my favorite player of all time was Kobe Bryant, and like just thinking about how I wanted that ultimately goal in life to like interview him. But like LeBron is, like just a bit larger than life in that same sort of way, like a Kobe. And so just thinking about that, um, and why I just sat and wanted to appreciate him. And I just remember too, like, yeah, I mean, he was amazing. He's a pro. He is incredibly composed. Knows this, like he's been doing this for a long time, so he's amazing with the media. But the biggest takeaway I would say from him was that after the interview was over, in the room, was he went around and shook everyone's hand and said thank you. And I thought that was so awesome because how many people have have interviewed LeBron or been in the room with LeBron or done that stuff. And the fact that he's been doing this for so long, but he still takes the time to appreciate the people around him was awesome. So like that was my biggest takeaway. I barely remember some of the stuff in that room, given I was like so nervous, and there was like it was another guy doing it too. Barely remember that stuff, but just remembering the way he was acting and composed and the appreciation that he gave, not just to me, but the camera guys, the everyone else that was around him, and that was special too. I remember leaving that and being like, that was awesome. I hope to, if I was a professional athlete, I hope to be as grateful and appreciative as he was,
That's awesome. So if there was another moment, I was going to ask you, like, out of all your experiences, from you can recall, maybe even first of all, USC. Shout out to USC because there's been a ton of stellar athletes that have come through USC, basketball, football. You know what I'm saying? But throughout your career with the NBA or GQ or the other roles that you've had, what would you say has been your favorite moment, favorite memory, favorite job assignment that you've had to do that you look back on like, damn, like that was pretty freaking awesome?
Yeah. I mean, so my favorite things have been the ones that I've spearheaded, like from beginning to end, in the way where I developed the content plan, developed the shot sheet, developed the outputs, and then got to actually go and be the one to film it in person and be the interviewer and all of that. Two of them that stand out to me was obviously the Kyle Kuzma closet tour. Basically how that came to be, I was like, we should do, it was kind of, he wanted to do something fashion with us. I thought the execution would be a closet tour. And I just being able to get there, be the one to kind of call the shots, ask him all the questions, make sure I had the camera guys with me, tell them what to film, tell them what to zoom in on, capture in, and really be the shot caller, and kind of like at 26 years old, sit in a room and tell Kyle Kuzma like what to do. Sounds kind of funny. Like I just thought, I'm like, what? I remember I had this moment that I'm like, what? How do I even, how am I doing this? Like, this is just crazy that I'm like producing this right now and I'm leading the shoot and getting to the say of everything from start to finish that's coming out of this, from again all the questions to all the outputs, and how this is going to look long form, how it's going to look on social, whatever, and being able to completely own that process from start to finish was like crazy to me, and still probably my favorite thing I've gotten to do. I did a similar thing with Shea. It wasn't as long though as the Kyle Kuzma one was though, because that one was again, we went to his house and it was like a full shoot. Whereas Shea was an event that he put on, and I did another thing with Jaden Ivey and his mom. That was really awesome. But the Kuzma one just stood out as my first big one that they kind of just let me I went up by myself, the camera guy, and really taking the reins there and calling the shots. Like I just remember doing that, being like, how the hell am I doing this right now? You know what I mean? So that one will always stick with me for sure. After that.
That's crazy. First of all, Kuz. So I'm born and raised in DC, DMV. Me and Alexis are both DMV natives. You know what I'm saying? So, I'm a Wizards fan through and through. So I'm happy that Kuz is rocking with the home team now. But it was funny because we had Terrence Mann on the podcast at the end of last year. And we were talking about just kind of fashion and stuff like that. And he was talking about how he feels like there's a difference between East Coast fashion or specifically LA fashion and East Coast fashion. He was like, in LA, people are kind of a lot more expressive and free with what they wear. People can be wearing something that's like crazy, and it would just be like, you know what, that's fine. It's LA, like that's what people do out here. Whereas on the East Coast, you could wear something and they're gonna be like, nah, like that ain't it, or we on your heels, or people gonna be just a lot more polarizing. I feel like Kuzma is obviously somebody who I love his style. I love his sense of fashion. Obviously, he's one of the most stylish players in the league. I'm pretty sure he was first team all league fits this year. For so what was your take on the pink sweater outfit? Obviously after talking to him and getting the maybe the behind the scenes. Also, fun fact, I'm out here in Japan currently, so I played pro.
Japan.
Yeah, I play pro basketball out here in Japan. So
Okay,
I'm
I didn't know you were in Japan though. I knew you did that, but that's
yes,
crazy.
yes. So I'm here now. So it was crazy when the Wizards came out here and I saw the dude wearing the pink sweater out here in Tokyo when they played. I was like, bro, this is like, bro is really an icon.
Worldwide.
Crazy. So, what was your take just on the outfit, and then also just on the whole? You're a LA girl that went through. So now that you've been in New York, you can kind of comment on the fashion scene on the both sides of the world. Do you agree that it's kind of a little bit more strict with what you can wear on the East Coast? It was a loaded question, so I don't know. It's a
Yeah,
lot.
no. Yeah, well, I'll comment on that first. So I feel like New York feels differently than the East Coast though, because I feel like New York actually even more than LA, like growing up LA, I'm telling you, I see everything. Like I see everything. Because I obviously keep my eye out. People take so many risks in New York and just try things and just because there's no judgment in New York. People are doing crazy things on the street every day, like that you couldn't even imagine. You know what I mean? Like I could get yelled at, someone calling me a name, just walking to go get a coffee in the morning. Like things happen all the time. So New York, I feel like it has that energy about it to where like people just don't, care. And I again see people taking all these risks. I wouldn't say the same about other places in the East Coast that I've been to. But I also feel like LA supports the risks, but not in the way that New York does. Like again, like I said, I really wouldn't. I don't. You wouldn't see the same people trying things in LA that you see in New York. So I just think New York's the outlier in that answer, in my opinion. But other than that, I agree. I would say I agree. So people in LA are just like I think naturally fashionable. They're pay attention to the brands and not just the brands, but like have their own sense of style and they're just on it. But New York, when it comes to risk taking and just doing whatever you want, that's why when you're talking to these guys, one thing I always ask them about, like when they really dress up, what cities they really dress up in. It's New York, Miami, and LA. And I think New York in general, though, more than Miami or LA, is the one where they really think like they could take risks. And I think you see that a lot reflected in the tunnels when you see the guys come here, especially from other teams that aren't from here. So that first, but second, yeah, my favorite part of the closet tour is obviously I get there, this house, and of course I noticed the pink sweater right away. It couldn't even be on a hanger because it was so big. And so seeing that, and I was so happy he brought it out because I was like, I had a few questions on it. Of course, talking about that fan that wore it. We actually mentioned that in the video that the final video we did, we showed the footage of him in the fan. So seeing him pull it out, seeing how big it was, and just really getting to see it up close because I like remember that moment and all the hate he got in his comments and all of that. And yeah, I mean, getting to ask him about it, hear about how worldwide it was, and how a moment in a tunnel with a player just blew up. I think it just shows how important fashion is to the NBA world in general and sports in general, but especially the NBA. So I think that was really cool to have that conversation with him about it. And he was kind of like, the pink sweater's retired now. Like, let's, because how many times he's been asked about it a lot. So that was funny, but I was happy I got to see it in person and see it up close and yeah, and just see him hold it up. I have a cool photo of him holding it up and smiling but just how that viral that went. I also remember too, I did an interview with Ian from League Fits after that, and he was about to buy the same sweater for Miles Turner when he was styling him previously, but Kuzma wore it first. And I remember I asked him, I was like, what is the sizing of this? So it only came in small, medium, and large. And it's just ginormous and just a risk-taking thing. I also in my corner over here I have a pink Kuzma bobblehead of him wearing the pink sweater that the PR guy from the Wizards sent to me after my interview. So I'm like, I always will remember that interview and that pink sweater forever, especially a big moment in my career too with being able to ask him about it.
That's awesome. So the last kind of serious question we'll ask you before we get you on some quick hitters and then get you out the door is I always want to ask, man, like I feel like women in sports have come a long way. Obviously I'm sitting here on the platform with two amazing women in sports, and I'm honored to be on here with you two gals that are doing amazing work. But I don't want to hear from Alexis too after this, Juju. In what ways do you think the industry still has to grow or change to better accommodate women in this space? And where would you like to see the industry in the future go as far as just opening doors for women in this sports industry? So I asked you first, and I want to get Alexis 2 cents as well.
Yeah. Well, did you guys see that interview with that Brazilian soccer player Marta?
I
I don't know
didn't.
if you saw that.
I'm about the
That like
loop.
made me cry.
I'm about the loop. All right, wait, give me the spark notes.
Yeah, I'm just saying it. Spark Notes, she just talked a lot about growing up not basically feeling like, she saw any women play soccer. It was all about men, all about men. And then now being recognized on the street and seeing how much the game has grown for women, all of the above. And she was crying and emotional about it and all of that. And I just think too, like, there's been so many wins for women, but there's also so far to go. I think like there's been a lot of big wins, but there's still a huge gap when it comes to male and female sports, especially, the W I think has so much potential to grow, and we're seeing how much it's grown, and even seeing how much popularity like the WNBA All-Star game had this year. I first want to see more, I want to see women's sports just really pop off. You know what I mean? Like just really people buy into it and recognize female athletes the way they deserve to be recognized. Seeing someone like Marta and her share her story, but seeing that on an even bigger level is something I hope. But when it comes to actually working in sports, just more representation. I still feel like, and Alexis, I don't know if you feel this way too, but working on the women's sports, but I'm in rooms with all men all the time, like still, and the top of companies all the time are predominantly men still. And I would love to see that look different. And I hope one of my biggest things is hoping to help and empower younger women who want to work in sports, and always being like supportive of them in that way, because you just want to encourage more women to work in the space and show that it's possible. And I think that's huge, because I being transparent, it's still, there's a lot of room to grow when it comes to especially higher levels of companies that are all still white men. So it's like seeing diversity in the future, I hope, is something that is possible and continues to get better. So yeah, that's my biggest hope as I continue to work in sports, is that we see more and more of that, and more women reach these high level positions.
Love that.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, mine is kind of a little bit of a layered answer. I think my experience has been a little bit different. Have always told me, you can do whatever you want. Like when I was playing basketball, my AAU team practiced an hour away. My dad was like, I don't care if this is the team you want to play for, we will get you there. So it's always, I've never felt like, oh, because I'm a girl, I can't do X, Y, and Z. Because I think my parents always like really empowered me and made sure like whatever I wanted to do, there was a time where I was doing swimming, soccer, and basketball all at the same time. They were like, if this is what you want to do, doesn't matter where it's at, we will get you there. You just have to promise me that when we get you to said location, you're going to give 110%. So I think I've kind of been lucky in that sense. I don't really think I noticed I guess you could say, the external women and men dynamic until I got to my master's program. It's nothing that's ever like directly like, hey, we don't think you know anything, but it's always like the little subtle things, or like them feeling like they have to over explain things, or like if they don't necessarily want me to participate in the conversation, they might, for instance, I'm not a big baseball girly. So if we're all having a conversation and they kind of just don't want me to participate or whatever, then like baseball seems to be like the ins and out of baseball seems to be their go-to, because they know that I'm not going to chime in something like that. I always like to listen, because I love to learn, but it's just like, it's kind of like just noticing those little subtle things. I also think that I've kind of positioned myself to work in positions where we're celebrated. Like, so for instance, I knew as soon as I got to Phoenix, I knew I wanted to pursue an internship with the Mercury. I didn't know what capacity, whether that be marketing, the comm side, social media, whatever. I knew like that was the top of my list. I want to intern at the Mercury, even if I get no sleep, because master's programs are no joke. Even if I have to intern here and not get any sleep, like that was at my top position, because I know how much their president, Vince Cozart, really appreciates women's sports. Like, he probably knows more about women's sports than I do, and he's, a man. So I made it very intentional to be in this space. But I feel like now that I've been in this space, and by the time my internship is over, I would have been there for a year. I feel like now that I've been in this space where women are appreciated, I think now my next step, I want to go somewhere where the representation of women might be a little bit lower, just so that I can take what I've learned from Mercury and kind of expedite that process for a said brand.
That's dope. I think that's well said from both of you guys. And before we get into the quick hitters and have a little bit of fun, and then wrap it up, I just want to say it's an honor for me to be on here with both of you guys. I always joke around with Alexis at the beginning of the podcast, talk about how she's a superstar and this and that. But no, that's real talk. You know what I'm saying? I feel like, Alexis, you've brought a lot to this podcast since you've been on here. So I definitely want to let you know that I'm definitely grateful to be doing this with you. And I know that one thing that you said too, man, I never forget this. When we had the episode with Kyle Allman Jr. and we were having the back and forth about the elevator comment, and you were like, how basically Kyle Allman Jr., for the people who didn't see the episode, if you haven't, go back and watch that. It's on YouTube. But basically he was talking about, he was in an elevator with CJ McCollum, and he was like, yo, that's cool. Like, he was saying CJ one of his favorite players. Alexis was like, hey, well, did you say anything? He was like, nah, I don't want to say anything, because Alexis was like, hey, like, my dad always told me, like, just as much as you're, have the opportunity to meet them, they have opportunity to meet you, and they can have opportunity to say 10 years from now, hey, I met Alexis Davis, in an elevator in Las Vegas at Summer League, and he's gonna always remember that, And I feel like when you said that, I was like, damn, like, that's really a gem. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like that's gonna be a moment that I'm gonna be able to have later on in life when Alexis is up, at ESPN, working her, CEO stuff, and be like, yo, I had her on the podcast back in the day. You know what I'm saying? So I definitely want to, give you your flowers for that. And you as well, Juju. I've been a huge fan of yours ever since I came across your page. You know what I'm saying? So I just want to thank you for coming on the podcast today and sharing the gems. I've been taking mental notes in my head about different ways to network and different ways to, work my way up this, journalism ladder. Like I said, we have a lot of comment from the high school to the things we studied in college. So, you really have inspired me just being able to listen to you on this platform. You know what I'm saying? So everyone, let both you guys know that you guys are doing exceptional work in this industry, and we're going to continue to, lift you guys up and tell more stories like this going forward. So definitely want to let you know for sure. But switching gears into some quick hitters, man, we're gonna have a little bit of fun, and then we'll get you out the door. I know you're a busy girl, like I said. You got.
Sorry.
So give me your Mount Rushmore of NBA fashion. Give me your top 4 best dressed guys in the league. Who's on the Mount Rushmore?
Got it. Sorry, everyone, to my charger fell. So we're all good. This is real over here. Okay, 4. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is my number 1. Then I'm gonna go with Jordan Clarkson. Then I'm gonna go with D'Angelo Russell, and then I'm gonna go with Devin Booker. Yeah,
4.
those are my
Solid 4. Okay, now we're going to talk strictly off the court vibes here. All right, off the court. We're taking All-Star Weekend or Summer League, because I feel like those are what are the most, everybody wants to pull up to those 2 events. So All-Star Weekend or Summer League, which one you taking?
Summer League, because I don't know, I love Summer League. I love how it's casual, given most guys are off duty. It's just, again, Vegas is really hot though, so that's a tough part. But yeah, I would say Summer League is fun having everyone there, and it's more casual.
Right. Okay. Give us your go-to fit, right? If let's say it's a prime time event. Let's say you're gonna cover, I don't know, Lakers, Celtics, NBA Finals, Game 7. You're covering it for GQ. What's your outfit?
Okay, so I've been really into like sets lately. Like, I like doing a whole blazer trouser set, or if it's hotter, doing like a kind of vest, button-down vest, trouser set. So for I would say I would do like a like maybe a beige. I have this like beige button-down vest that I'd wear with my beige trousers, and probably a cool pair of sneakers, like some Jordan ones. Or if I want to be a little bit taller, maybe I put on some loafers because I'm not super tall. So if I have a loafer that has like a little bit something in it, that helps.
Got it. Okay. Now this is a little bit of a selfish question because, like I said, I'm in Japan currently, but I'm gonna take my behind back to LA once I come back to the States. So, give me your favorite places to go out on the town in LA, have a good time.
Ah, okay. Favorite places to go. I well now when I'm like acting like I'm old, but now in my I like love going to good dinners. But
Mhm.
like so beforehand, I would say it's probably changed. Even in New York now, like I love going to a good dinner with some wine, or I like margarita, something like
Right up my
that. So,
alley. Right up my alley.
right your alley. So like that, I would say. What's somewhere I tried recently? There's a place like Gran Blanco, I remember I think had something good, or Great White. Like they have like just good restaurants. Um, for a more like there's a place called Jones. That's really good, good food. And I like the vibes there. Also when there's music anywhere, I like going there. For one that's probably like if you know is a little bit more bigger of a night, like a Delilah. I know that's kind of basic, but they have really good chicken tenders, and they always have a show when it comes to like music, and the women, like there's a bunch of costumes and all of that. So like that's kind of fun. Yeah.
Okay. And last but not least, something that the world would be surprised to know about Juju Adams.
Ooh. Um, let's think. Ooh. I wish I had a special talent. I don't. I have moved a lot in my life. When I was a kid, I moved 13 times. So that was always a big thing that it's kind of, I always say that as my fun fact that I've moved a lot. I've barely lived in the same place. Like I said, I'm kind of nomadic. I've barely lived in the same place for like longer than a year tops. So that's kind of a crazy, crazy fun fact.
So you mentioned a super talent thing. If you could have a superpower, what would it be then? If you could have a superpower.
Oh, like teleport. Because I think too, one of the hardest parts of living in New York is all my best friends and family are in LA. So I'd love to be able to teleport really fast, get over there, and then come back when I need to for work. Also too, because I'm on a lot of flights for work, long flights, being able to get there faster would be love it. Versus the hours of traveling definitely weighs on you sometimes.
That's a gem. That's a gem. All right. Well, to wrap it up, we always ask our final question. Shout out to All the Smoke. Who is one person that we should have on the What's in Your Bag podcast? But whoever you say, you got to give us the assist and help us get them on the show. This could be a player. This could be someone in the industry. This could be somebody who's I don't know, photographer, designer, stylist, anything. Anybody who's doing dope work in the space that you think we should have on the show, or that you think the world needs to hear more from them about their story.
Yeah, so I love working with stylists. One of my favorite stylists that I've been working with recently is this woman named London Wilmot. So I had a podcast for a little bit. I want to bring it back eventually, but it's been a little bit hard to do it. And I brought her on mine, and she's just like such an awesome person, and really making waves when it comes to styling. She styles CeeDee Lamb. She's worked with Danny Green. She's worked with a bunch of just big guys, and she's just awesome. She just got married, so I'll help you make that happen for her. She just might be gone for a second, but she also has her own company too as well, that I can't pronounce correctly, but she's amazing. So I'll have to connect her next. Just someone who's really on the trends, on making a big wave in the sports fashion world.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. We'll definitely be in contact. Love to talk some fashion stuff with her for sure.
Yeah.
Um, Well, this has been great. This has been great, man. I know, like I said, you're a busy gal these days, so I definitely don't want to take up too much of your time. But thank you for coming on here and chopping it up with us on this Friday morning. I know you could be doing a bunch of other things, so we really appreciate it here at the What's in Your Bag podcast. And like I said, I'm a huge fan of what you're doing. Going to continue to follow along your journey, and hopefully, when I'm back you're in New York now. My twin brother actually.
I go to LA sometimes though.
Perfect. My twin brother. I got actually. Maybe I shouldn't announce this yet, but he's got a new job. He's gonna be moving back to the East Coast. He hasn't announced it yet, but you know what I'm saying. It's pretty close to New York. If y'all could put 2 and 2 together, if y'all listen to this, you know what I'm saying. I got
Sounds awesome if I'm thinking what it is.
Yes. So maybe we could connect soon when I'm back on that side of the world. But
Awesome.
again, so much for your time, man. We got to do this again one day, man. When you're
Yeah, this is great. Thank you. No, really fun. I appreciate you guys having me on. It's always exciting to be able to meet both of you and have some great conversations. I appreciate it.
For sure. All righty, guys. This has been another episode of the What's in Your Bag podcast presented by Bet Online. As always, remember to subscribe to this podcast. Man, if you're still here watching this and haven't clicked that subscribe button, you guys are bugging out. So go ahead and tap that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up. It goes a long way. This is going to be my guy, Pull Up Tay, on the outro. We'll see you guys next time, folks. Peace.
One time, cause you special. I had some hoop dreams of right rounds for my mentor. Every target that I shoot is on point like a pencil. Different route, change relationships, I'm so sorry. Came up from the trenches and I made it, I say hardly. Now